Demos, one-on-one kind of sharing about food, but it's also about ways in which we can change our community food environments in very kind of creative and intuitive ways. So we started with questions like, what would happen if the food shelf environment was actually set up in a way to encourage people to choose more fruits and vegetables? Vegetables were displayed in a more visible, right, way, an attractive way, or a beautiful way even. Could our food shelves be spaces, community spaces that are beautiful, right? Community spaces for sharing and connecting around food. So we know that historically our food shelves basically were developed around the abundance and the availability of processed or non-perishable foods. We know our food choices are affected in part by our environment, right? But we started asking, well, we know that food's not available as much as it used to be. Those donations are kind of down. And then there's this need in our community to really address the nutritional sort of, hunger is not just about, hunger in our country, in our state is not a calorie issue, right? It's an access issue to nutritious, healthy food. So what if, right? These spaces became spaces that really focus on fruit and vegetable distribution with vibrant signage, produce banners, shelf labels, like you even might see at a farmer's market. And what if you walked into a food shelf just like you walked in here today, and you were greeted with the welcoming and comforting smells of onions and garlic cooking? What would that experience do? What would that invite in people in the way that they interact with you and the people around them, and the food choices that they make? And then what if folks had a chance to taste a particular vegetable they thought they didn't like? And again, going back to this idea of having this be a space of connecting with one another, right? Sharing about stories about food. I mean, I love the stories like we were demoing parsnips in Hardwick, and a man came in and started talking about growing parsnips with his grandmother, Like, that conversation starter was then the person next to him started talking about, well, let me tell you how I like to eat parsnips. I mean, parsnips, right? I never saw two people who were excited about parsnips, but it was connecting with one another around food and where our food comes from. These parsnips came from a local farm from Kings Springs, just up the road. So behavioral economics has been one of the frameworks we have used to, it's sort of an evidence-based sort of framework to say this program isn't just a bunch of good ideas and pretty signs and pretty displays. There's some real good research to say this is a significant way that you can impact someone's food choices, right? And again, it's making fruits and vegetables, like making that choice an easier choice. Some people talk about it being nudges, so nudging people gently to make a decision in a certain way. These are psychological, social, and environmental changes that can be made. So this is the new sign at Groundworks Collaborative. You walk in, and this is what you see before you even see the produce that's being displayed. This is behavioral economics in action. But again, it's creative and it's intuitive. So I want to talk about some of the research. There's about 3 different places where we've gone to research, look for research. One is come out of Cornell University, their school lunch line. David just spoke at our conference last year, so some of this will be familiar to you. This is a new publication that is just like hot on the presses. And this is research that's actually been done in food pantries just in the last few months using behavioral economics to influence choices. And the third is really coming out of healthy retailer initiatives. So we looked at like the Baltimore Healthy Stores Initiative and other initiatives around the country that are really trying to make grocery stores and local corner stores more, healthy, have healthier foods as part of the choices. So displays is a core component of it, right? Attractive, well-organized displays. They're easy to get to. They're front and center. They're at eye level. You combine the signage to attract, and call attention to the items. Some of the research behind it. So here's one of the research findings. You take a salad bar, instead of having it up against the wall, you put it in the center of the room. right? That increased sales by a third. So strategic location, container change, getting all those vegetables out of those cardboard boxes, right? Moving it into any other container except a cardboard box. They did plastic crates, right? We sometimes use these beautiful wooden bins or baskets, but increase the cabbage that people took, the quantity that they took, and how many people took it, right? Eye-level placement, again, it's just bringing that to be a more prominent location, so people are drawn to it. So what we're finding from this research is a lot of the decisions that we make aren't necessarily rational. We're kind of walking through the world, and we might decide to pick something up or even choose to eat it based on many different factors, but it's not necessarily ones that we're thinking about. So along with displays, you can think about order. So this really matters. When you have a set of choices, you can encourage people to make certain choices by putting the healthier items in front. So the research that was done around this was just putting that white milk in front of the chocolate milk. Yeah, same idea, putting the water in front of the soda, right? Putting the brown rice in front of the white rice, or the brown flour in front of the white flour. Along with displays, the research is still out on this, but I think anyone that's, gone to a supermarket or co-op, this will resonate for you. When something looks full and abundant, right, you're more likely to take it. So with produce, Putney Food Shelf does a great job using smaller containers to make them look full, right? Other food shelves, when they don't have an abundance, they might actually put brown paper bags under the produce to give it lift, right, to make it look more full and abundant. But keeping those bins looking full is what will draw people to it. And thinking about that in terms of other food you're distributing. So if you walk into a food shop and you see this huge abundance of breads and cakes, and that's the first thing you see, well, yeah, you're going to be drawn there, like a kid in a candy store, and grab those items. But if you walk in, the first thing you see is produce, and there's an abundance of produce, that's going to make a difference in what people are choosing. Along with displays, the attractive baskets and bowls can make a difference, but also having multiple locations in your space has been shown to be really effective. So this idea of multiple exposures. So this is an example from Groundworks, again, in Brattleboro. They just put the fruit in a simple, beautiful basket. They moved it out of the cardboard box. This can make an impact in what people are choosing. Prominent location for this study, they put the broccoli at the front of the line instead of the middle. People were choosing that. And this was the most recent one around the multiple exposures idea, where they had multiple locations within the food shelf of whole wheat bread, and it increased the percentage of clients that took those items, chose those items. So the idea is that you might have, with the fruits and vegetables, you might have that at the right at the entrance. You might also have it at the checkout area. Multiple places where people can choose or select those items. And you can even take this one all the way to your home, right? Right? I bought these really nice little energy bars for my family. I keep them in the basement, right? Because if I keep them upstairs, my husband and my son will eat all of them in 3 days. I've been able to keep them for I think 2.5 weeks or something. So having things out of sight, out of mind, at different levels on the shelves and opaque containers can also influence people's choices if you're really trying to encourage healthier food choices, but you want to respect, right? It's really important to respect people's choices. And so, it's not like you're saying they can't have these items, but you're setting up your food environment in a way that may make that choice just a little bit more difficult, right? Not as easy to make as a fruit and vegetable choice. Convenience is another behavioral economic strategy, bundling items together. One research study showed that when foods are bundled together for convenience, 18% of people took that bundled item. I like this. I don't have any research for this, but this is some cool ideas for adding convenience. We're sort of in a grab-and-go society now for snacking and all of that. So thinking creatively again of how you can make some of these foods easy for people to take and to eat. Signage and prompts is one of the exciting areas of behavioral economics in the sense that it's highlighting certain vegetables in this context, that are appealing or desirable in some way. So placing signage in strategic locations can make a difference. This is a really interesting one. This was just come out of the research from the last few months. Priming. Everyone loves oranges, right? They didn't really have to work that hard to get people to take oranges, but they almost had 100% of people that came through the door take oranges after this. They simply put a beautiful photograph of oranges in the waiting area, and then when they walked into the food shelf, more people took them. So our food shelves are doing that as well. Like we have NECA Food Shelf is sort of highlighting some fun facts about carrots. There's some other sort of posters and things like that. This is Rutland Community Covered Up Top here, saying that we have fresh fruits and vegetables. So people are going to see those signs as a way of sort of priming them to make certain choices. This is an interesting study here where they simply just put arrows and people followed the arrows. A little mindlessly just followed the arrows, but they took the fruits and vegetables in much larger quantity. Putting arrows on the floor, hanging them from the ceiling, something to consider. And shopping cart signs. So Rutland Community Covered is trying this year. A little nudge to remind people and creating a social norm around that choice. The actual study that was done used this image here, and they actually set a number. They said, in this store, people usually take 5 items. So that's something to consider as well. Creating a social norm around people taking fruits and vegetables can make a significant difference in how people are choosing, or what people are choosing. Putting recipe cards near the food. In this research study, low-income mothers were more confident in choosing those items because they would be able to use that produce. And then and another sort of way to use signage is shelf labels, different kinds of guiding stars, a color coding system. These have been researched as well as encouraging people, having those things stand out. And this was interesting. This is
what are the color coding? What specifically was it trying to tell people?
Red, yellow, green. Like so, green is like super healthy. Yellow, be cautious.
But do they actually attach words to the red?
Yeah, I can't read it, so I have to follow up with you exactly what it was. But it was sort of like warning. This is maybe take less of red. We haven't, in Vermont, we haven't had any food shelves do the red, yellow, green color coding, but we have had places do the stars and the shelf labels. This particular shelf label increased the distribution of oatmeal significantly at food pantries in this one research study, which was really interesting. This particular food shelf had a really hard time moving oatmeal at all prior to using this shelf label. So, and then some of the best sort of ways to sort of encourage people are really the simplest ones. So verbally, just encouraging folks, right? Saying, oh, did you get your fruits and vegetables? Did you see what we have today? That can go a long way. And again, there's some research behind that saying, in this particular study, cafeteria workers asked if you want a salad and increase sales by 1/3. So I share some of this research with you because I realize that it's going to speak to people in a certain way, right? Sometimes if you have a research study behind it, it might give you a little bit more encouragement to give it a try. But I would just say, give these ideas a try and see what you experience. A lot of these are really low cost ways to sort of change in a very subtle way the environment of your food shelf that's just going to encourage people to make a healthier choice. In a lot of ways, it's very simple. We focus a lot on trying to affect people's taste expectations. So there's, in nutrition education, especially with children, we used to talk about, oh, if you eat your fruits and vegetables, you're going to have lots of energy to do sports and do really well in school. And now the research is saying, actually, just really focus on taste with kids. And, that kind of probably, people are like, yeah, that. My son hated broccoli, but now, after many times of being like, it's so good. Really, you've got to give it a try. Focusing on taste, but thinking about the names of food, descriptive names, is one of the things that's been studied. So giving healthy food more descriptive names can make a difference. So thinking about those shelf labels, right? thinking about, even if you're in a meal site, if you've been talking to your kids or your neighbors, how would you describe kale chips, or how would you describe a burrito, or something like that? So I just want to I think take a moment to reflect a little bit. That was a lot of data points, and I know it's a little bit dry, but I wanted to share with you some more photos from BT Fresh Sites and really just emphasize this piece that the food decisions that we're making are oftentimes more emotional than rational. And the research really affirms that, right? We are more willing to add things to our diet than take them away. And so we can really encourage people making healthier choices by focusing on, again, that celebration of joy of fresh foods. People respond to sensory experiences and immediate gratification. So we all started as kids in the world. And I think it's good and helpful to go back and remember, how do we get kids excited about eating fruits and vegetables? I think in a lot of ways we can use those same techniques for ourselves and our family as well. So displaying the food prominently, a lot of sites are starting to use these glass front refrigerators to really bring attention to the fruits and vegetables. It's a great way, combining it with shelf labels. So this attractive presentation definitely can influence someone choosing something healthy over unhealthy, right? That physical placement, making things stand out, can actually increase their consumption. So this is where we go from changing the food environment and changing what people are deciding to eat to actually, potentially, right, that next stage of change, which is real behavior change. What people's dietary behaviors are. Maybe we will change the world for some people, right? These things can make a difference. I really, truly believe, based on what we're seeing at the food shelves. Just by the very fact that these food shelves are starting to distribute so much more produce than they ever have, and it's hard for them to keep it on the shelf, right? So, providing a greater variety, right? That alone is going to increase the amount that people are taking. Changing the containers, which I've talked about, combining with attractive signage, and then just again, going back to food is a great way to connect with people. You are in this incredible sort of space within our communities. It's a food environment where there's so much opportunity to connect with folks around food. And that can act as a motivational experience. So you have a positive experience around food. We had a woman come into the Rutland Community Cupboard. She was adamant how vile Brussels sprouts were, and she just hated them, right? There was a woman there who just kept talking about how great they were. She tried them and she loved them, right? She went home and ate those Brussels sprouts and came back and told us how much she liked them. But it was a whole experience. It was a social experience as well. We went to the NECA food shelf. There was an older man and woman sitting. They're a little bit kind of withdrawn, not really talking. We were going to demo rutabaga. And, 20 minutes after we just came through the door, they were still talking about rutabaga and all the ways to prepare it. They were so animated. It was really a beautiful thing to see. So this process of connecting people over food can really influence how likely someone's willing, to try something new. And that word of mouth advertising is so much more effective than just, giving out information. Really personalizing it. And yeah, like what I was talking about, someone is going to think something they think it's going to taste good, right, based on what someone else is saying. They're actually going to like it more than they thought they would. The research has sort of documented that, It's really interesting. We're greatly influenced by the people around us. And that I really believe we have this opportunity here. I believe that our food shelves, our meal sites, they have been overlooked as spaces for education, for nutrition education, for really making a difference in people's lives and the food that they're choosing, and ultimately those health outcomes. Sandy, is she here? Sandy Vincent? She's at the conference, yeah. So it starts with the caring volunteers and staff, and I know that a lot of our food shelves are trying to bring in more volunteers, right? So in Vermont, there's this incredible group of people who are in our communities who are so passionate about local food, right? Where our food is coming from. That is an untapped volunteer base of people. Students at colleges, young folks, families, who they can come in and do your beautiful produce displays and your beautiful signage and do a fun little fact board about carrots. And I really think that there's an opportunity here to engage people who are really excited about local fresh food. And this might be their way to get through the door, right? And feel a sense of connection to your space. So obviously we need to have those helping hands, people who are willing to sort through, right, and remove those spoiled items, gather that variety of produce, right? Just make it, that's like the first step, making it a bigger and more abundant part of what you're distributing. And thinking very creatively about how it's displayed, you know. On the food shelf, they had a local carpenter donating all his time to building these shelves. And, you know, they're very, very small food pantries. Are they here in the room? So I know they're here today. I think they're like in a room maybe 8 feet by 6 feet.
This is who?
The Putney Food Shelf.
Yeah.
Tiny. And they've been able to distribute produce, right? And a lot of it, very creatively. Working on convenience and appeal, pre-packaging, like processing. These are other ways to make the food more accessible to the folks in our community. So when you look at the V2 Fresh strategies here, you'll see that it's sort of like a menu of choices. And there's many activities to choose from, but they all fall into sort of one category. There's 5 of them. So it's improving the layout, prominence of displays, is working with procurement and storage of those items. It's emphasizing convenience, and then utilizing signage and enhancing sort of taste preferences with cooking demos. So those are sort of the 5 areas that we focus on. Some sites have started offering special events where they distribute produce as on a day that's separate from their normal operating hours. And they have a big community event where they are able to distribute hundreds, sometimes thousands of pounds of produce. And this has been a very effective way also to distribute larger amounts to the community. I just want to go back to this because, again, this is, I think, one of the most meaningful ways that people can connect. Your volunteers and staff, just those simple personal reminders can go a long way. They're low-cost ways. They can literally transform a space. Nectar Food Shelf in St. Johnsbury, it used to be behind a closet door. People would have to write down on a list what they wanted, and someone would go behind the door and get it out of the closet. Now they walk in, and this is the first thing they experience in the entranceway of the food shelf. So it's about activating our hearts and minds, right? It's a sensory experience, so what looks and feels and tastes good. We've been really inspired, I think, by the partners in our community who have taken these ideas, and then this is what they've done with it, right? They're really at the forefront of looking at the opportunity to bring food education, nutrition education to, right, so folks at a much larger scale, right? And it might not be that someone can attend a class for 6 weeks, 1 hour a week. The interaction might be only a few minutes. But, you know, if you're a mother and you've got that $3 to spend, right, like Soda was talking about, it's really risky to spend that $3 for maybe the first time on that broccoli or that rutabaga or that parsnip or turnip. You don't know if your kid's going to eat it. This is I do believe this is a way to give people an opportunity to try something they may have not tried before, bring it to their families, and then when maybe they do develop a preference and taste for that item, and one day will go and seek out, you know, their farmer's market or grocery store and be able to buy that with the dollars that they have. But this is a low risk sort of way to get people excited about things they've never tried before: chard and kale and fennel. The gill feather turnip, I mean, even that one, you know, which I guess is our new state vegetable, isn't it? Neck and Newport, we went from cardboard boxes to produce being distributed right in the entranceway, beautiful signage. So again, we're not going to change the world with this, but it's one small step. Connecting to one another, connecting to food we eat, connecting hopefully to our own health. So next up is taste tests and cooking demos. I'm going to hand it over to Andrea and Sarah. So we're about 34 minutes into the workshop, so they're going to spend about 10-15 minutes all sort of